Hey, YangGang, KMO here. Yesterday I posted a bit of conversation with my friend James Howard Kunstler, and I asked him what he thought of Andrew Yang, and he said that he liked Andrew Yang, but he wasn't very attracted to the notion of a universal basic income, which is Andrew Yang's signature policy proposal. First of all, let me say that I find the YangGang to be much more positive in their communications online than, our society at large these days. But we still have a long way to go in order to nip some very harmful habits of thought and communication in the bud before it does serious damage to Andrew Yang's candidacy. There's the hashtag LetYangSpeak, which originated when the network that was hosting the first presidential debate seemed to cut his microphone, and even if that didn't actually happen, they gave him very, very little time to talk compared to candidates like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. So yes, it is absolutely imperative that, the gatekeepers of the conversation allow Yang to participate, but I think more importantly, online, we need to let Andrew Yang speak for Andrew Yang because his demeanor is very attractive even to people who are not initially attracted to the concept of a universal basic income, as I myself was not. For me, I came to the YangGang because Andrew Yang was speaking about artificial intelligence, automation, technological displacement, and the future of workers, the future of normal people. These are all topics which are of the utmost importance to me as a parent of two teenage boys who will soon have to figure out some way to create economic relevance, who will need to find a way to make an income, generate an income, in a job landscape which is increasingly hostile, to the long-term well-being of workers. So I read Andrew Yang's book, The War on Normal People. Actually, I listened to the audiobook, which he narrates himself. So I got to listen to Andrew Yang's voice for many hours talking about his policy proposals. I later bought the book. And I was very fortunate in that while I was taking in the material and giving Andrew Yang's ideas a chance, I wasn't in contact with any YangGang members who were hurling insults at me or making very uncharitable assumptions about my point of view or my character because I wasn't an uncritical advocate for their candidate. So James Howard Kunstler, I think a lot of you would enjoy listening to his podcast, possibly reading his books, maybe looking at his paintings or listening to his music, if you didn't know that, he wasn't on board with universal basic income. But because, people who had never heard of him before encountered him for the first time in a video in which he says that, he doesn't really think that universal basic income is a good idea, given his impression of where the country is going, people made very uncharitable assumptions about Jim's point of view and his positions in life. This is not helpful, people. This is really destructive, and it's harmful to the Yang candidacy. This is the thing that I need to stress over and over again. Like, people made uncharitable comments about Jim's age. Old people vote. Don't insult them, and don't insult them for being old. That's just gross. They no more chose the time of their birth than you did. So, what I want to do right now is just share with you a few minutes of the podcast interview that I recorded with Jim yesterday. This is stuff that was not in the YouTube video, and I know most of you didn't follow the link to actually listen to the audio-only podcast. So here's just a few minutes of that. Please, take it in with an open mind, and don't be formulating your response before you've heard the whole thing. Hello, and welcome to another installment of the Sea Realm Podcast. I am your host, KMO, and this is episode number 550. As I hope most of you know, I do daily YouTube uploads. It is my 2019 New Year's resolution to upload something to YouTube every day. And in the past couple of weeks, I have discovered a magic formula for getting people to watch my videos. I put the name Andrew Yang in the title and YangGang in the description. And it's not entirely cynical. I mean, I've been talking about artificial intelligence for quite some time. I've been talking about universal basic income for a few years now. And, these are things that are intimately and inextricably involved with Andrew Yang's campaign for the White House. So, it's no stretch whatsoever for me to, devote my content exclusively to Andrew Yang and his platform because it's right on in terms of my interests. So today, and this was recorded just today, I got Jim Kunstler on Zoom, And we talked for a bit about, well, the Democrats and eventually the Republicans, but it's all electoral politics. And I put the first 5 minutes or so up on YouTube, so hopefully some of the YangGang have followed the link here to the C-Realm podcast. If so, welcome. And as you'll hear at the very beginning of the conversation, Andrew Yang is my candidate. Even though, longtime listeners to the podcast, they might be a little bit puzzled by that, because I have had guests on who have articulated at length the problems with the notion of universal basic income. And I have to say, I'm still not entirely sold on it, although I very much would like to get that $1,000 a month. It would make a noticeable, significant difference in my quality of life, I think. Certainly of my standard of living. But, and I think this confuses some of the YangGang. A lot of YangGang members think that I'm anti-Yang, even though, I've sent money to his campaign. Why do they think that? Well, I'm just not the kind of person to, as Nicole Foss would say, offer uncomplicated support to much of anything. Even stuff I like, I'm going to dig into and criticize. So if I push back against Andrew Yang's statements or his policy proposals, please don't take that as evidence that I'm anti-Yang. I'm definitely not. It's just my way of showing support is to, in some ways, be the loyal opposition. To be the person who withholds uncritical acceptance, uncritical adulation. Doubting Thomas was still an apostle. So, Jim, we were just talking for a video about Andrew Yang's candidacy. I'd like to just invite you to talk about your impression so far of the expansive DNC field of candidates and the crazy sideshows that they call debates.
Yeah, they're really more like game shows, aren't they? I mean, everybody's standing behind some kind of a pulsating lighted podium, and there's flashing lights all over the place, and it's like something out of a 1990s movie about the future. What do I think about it? Well, I got to preface my remarks by saying that I've been a registered Democrat since 1972, but I'm really alienated from the party as it currently exists. And, I don't see what's going on as much more than just a fantastically elaborate race hustle at the moment. And it's an appalling thing that just seems to be stirring up more animosity between different ethnic groups in this country. And I think it's quite dangerous. It's certainly not a salutary exercise for the voters. And I'm just completely revolted by what I see up there. There aren't any candidates that I don't know. I find Tulsi kind of appealing. And I like Andrew Yang's demeanor, though I don't like his program, which I attribute a little bit to his youthfulness and perhaps political naivety. The rest of them are quite appalling. Kamala Harris seems to be...
Jim is somebody who has no positive feelings for any of the mainstream Democratic candidates, but he kind of likes Tulsi Gabbard and Andrew Yang, not for their policy proposals, but for their demeanor. That's a good place to start, yes? It's not a good place to start if the first thing that he hears from any YangGang member is an insult. Or, even worse, some horrible misrepresentation of his position. I get a lot of feedback from people that starts with the word "so," and then they follow it up with some, extremist characterization or mischaracterization of something I've said. Now, suppose you're talking to somebody and you try to make a point to them and they say, "so," and then they pretend to summarize your point of view, but they misrepresent it, or they take it to ridiculous extremes, and they make it clear that they're highly motivated not to understand what you're trying to say. Are you going to be more inclined or less inclined to listen to them from that point forward? Like sarcasm, deliberately misrepresenting or making somebody's point sound more extreme than they meant it to be is counterproductive. It is harmful. It damages Andrew Yang's chance of winning the Democratic nomination, and that's not what you want, right? Impulse control, people. It is better to say nothing at all than it is to insult somebody who is not immediately on board with the idea of universal basic income. It's not a popular position, but Andrew Yang is a very charismatic person who stays relentlessly positive, does not use sarcasm, does not insult people, does not deliberately mischaracterize the positions that they express. And so Andrew Yang is the best advocate for Andrew Yang. If you're in a conversation with somebody online, particularly if it's text-based, and you find yourself saying so, and then you're about to summarize their position, stop typing. Stop typing. You are hurting Andrew Yang's campaign if you are antagonistic with people who don't immediately jump on board with everything he stands for. Let Andrew Yang speak for Andrew Yang. If you can get them to listen to the 3-hour Joe Rogan podcast, amazing, great. But if not, have them listen to 3 minutes of his closing statement at the most recent debate, particularly if you can find the version that somebody has set to some Hans Zimmer music, which makes it sound really inspiring. Don't get shitty with people thinking that you're doing Andrew Yang's work. You're not. You're working against him at that point. All right. That is all. Thanks very much for watching. I will talk to you again tomorrow.